Hey there, listener. Corey Andrew Powell here, and I'm excited to share that Motivational Mondays is now sponsored by BetterHelp. Feeling stressed or anxious? Well, BetterHelp brings you online therapy that's convenient and affordable. NSLS members get 50% off your first month of BetterHelp when you sign up at betterhelp.com/NSLS or click the link in the show notes. Start your journey to better mental health today. Hello, everyone. I am Corey Andrew Powell, your host, and today on Motivational Mondays, we have an extraordinary guest with us whose life spans from military's highest ranks to becoming one of the world's most respected spiritual teachers. Suzanne Giesemann is a former Navy commander turned best-selling author and medium, and she's transformed lives by blending her sharp analytical mind with a deep commitment to spirituality. Now, she'll be sharing insights from her new book, Mediumship, coming this fall, and it's a guide that helps connect us all across the veil. And I use that term so we can describe and discuss what that is. And it demonstrates the continuity of consciousness, another term that I love in her books that just really makes you wonder what's going on after we leave this earthly life. So, Suzanne, welcome to Motivational Mondays.
Thank you, Corey. Oh, I just love your energy already.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, I could not wait to have this conversation with you. Like, I literally feel the energy because it taps into so many things that, well, just in general, your work taps into so many things that I think we all ponder, we all think about, maybe even dismissively when we shouldn't, when it just comes to like our existence, really, and the idea of what goes beyond it, beyond our earthly existence. But before we get into that, as I mentioned, your background, of course, is extraordinary. You've done a military career, of course, and now you're a best-selling author and spiritual teacher. So I'm curious to know, though, if there's like one sort of like, I guess, a streamlined version, if you would say, took you from a successful military career to now this wonderful new trajectory you're on as a spiritual leader.
Yes, there is, Corey. And I served at the very top of the U.S. military as aide to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. So I've flown on Air Force One with the president. I've visited kings and queens around the world with the chairman. I was in the last aircraft in U.S. airspace on 9/11, staring at the gaping hole in our office building, the Pentagon, when we returned hours later, and stepping over jet engine pieces in the grass started me asking those deep life questions that ultimately, hopefully, we all ask. But I didn't get satisfactory answers at the time. And so I basically ran away from life after 9/11. I retired with 20 years to the date on purpose so I could go live my dreams with my husband of sailing off into the sunset. And we did that. But I know now that we really do come here to learn certain things about the truth of who we are. And sometimes that takes a major wake-up call. And that's what happened with me with the death of my stepdaughter, 27 years old, sergeant in the Marine Corps, crossing the flight line to report for duty one morning and struck by a bolt of lightning out of the blue. And she was 6 months pregnant at the time. So now this was deeply personal. And I needed to know, why do some people leave before a full life? And my most burning question after seeing her body in the coffin was, where is she now? Because it was just suddenly so clear to me that there is something that enlivens these bodies. When you look at a lifeless body, the change is so drastic that we just know there's something, there's a spark in each of us. And I know now that spark never goes out.
I love that because it gives us all hope when we think about our loved ones who've passed on, or even when we think about our own mortality, right? And when we have death of family, pretty much we start thinking about our own mortality. And it can be a really deep, scary, depressing conversation if we're looking at it in the negative. But when you speak about the continuity of consciousness, it becomes like, wait a minute, we don't really, just this earthly shell, if you will, is what, for lack of a better term, dies. But
Yes.
we, the being, continues on. So talk about the continuity of consciousness.
I will. But when I tried to connect with Susan through meditation, I opened up to the awareness that we are awareness in a body, consciousness, and that we can have adventures in consciousness right here and now. That opened me up to the ability to connect with other people's loved ones who have passed. And with that military background, I insist on evidence, factual details about the person I'm talking to that I couldn't possibly know. So now I have zero doubt that our consciousness survives death. That's that continuity of consciousness. But it means so much more than just talking to dead people, if you want to put it in those terms. It means that right now, the fact that we can communicate with higher consciousness means we are that higher consciousness. So when life gets stressful, we can shift our awareness to the higher realms, access guidance that most people don't know is readily available, and find peace and find guidance and find out we're not alone right here, right now.
Okay, so we were saying that, you look for proof in these situations because well, not so much maybe for you because they're real at this point, but now other people, in order for you to convince others that it's really happening or that this is a real thing, you now are in a situation as a medium where you can provide proof to them that you are actually talking to a spirit that was in fact connected with them. Is that a fair assessment?
Oh, it's very fair. In fact, the challenge, and why you said, you used the very good word, that people are dismissive of this ability that all of us can develop, because I had no idea I had this ability. It's the evidence that changes hearts and minds. When I sit with someone, it's not like some mediums who would just say, oh, yes, your loved one is here and they love you very much. They may see them. I don't see them. So I have to feel them and hear them and see images that they send me. And that includes, how did you die? What kind of work did you do? What is your personality like? What's your favorite thing to do? Share with me memories. Tell me things going on in your loved one's life right now that I can't possibly know. And they come through every time.
And when that happens, do you hear them almost like a conversation? I always wonder about that when I hear mediums speak about the communication. Like, do you actually hear it as if it was a real physical voice saying, "Hey, Suzanne, I'm here." Like, what does it sound like?
Yeah, it's a conversation. And that's another reason that I know this is not imagination. This is real-time interactive conversations with a sentient being. They just happen to no longer be in a body. But it sounds like my thoughts if I haven't met the person. I definitely have connected with my stepdaughter. It's her voice. I've connected with others who have passed who I know, and it's their voice. But if it's not, it just sounds like my own thoughts, yet it's conversational. Just a quick example, the young man that said, tell my mother I see what she's doing in meditation, trying to connect with me, and tell her the connection is good. And he described a method that my client was using, and it was absolutely something she had been doing. But when they say, tell my mother, and the connection is good, this is a real conversation.
Wow, that is fascinating. I know, of course, the new book is mediumship, but we have to definitely reference the prior book, I guess, and have that, the Awakening Way, which is where you really talk a lot more about what led you to this place. And so one of the examples I love is where it kind of begins with your stepdaughter, where the presence, her presence is there, and it's confirmed for you that, and there's a child with her, or like an infant with her. Can you share that story?
She was 6 months pregnant, as I said, and we knew it was going to be a boy. And I took my husband to a medium. And what's funny, Corey, is that he didn't really know what a medium was when I took him to this woman, and now he's married to one. So it's like this cosmic joke. But the medium said, "Oh, there's a young woman here in a military uniform, and she's calling you daddy as she stands in front of you, sir," she said to my husband. And she gave other pieces of information about how Susan passed, other things she couldn't have known. But the clincher was when she said, and there's a little baby boy here with her who she wants to introduce to you, but he's standing back shyly as if he doesn't know you. That was it. That was the point that changed my life. And I said, this is real, because I had not given her our last name. I was skeptical. I didn't want to be duped. But I could not help but admit that we can connect with loved ones because they're still here, and we are souls just like they are.
You do raise a great point, though, because there are many people who are charlatans and are out there doing, not doing it for the wrong purposes and taking advantage of people through a lot of, shenanigans, if you will. But, that's why it's important for you to give the other side of the story of having been a person who was skeptical yourself, been now convinced, and now have developed your own abilities in that space. And you also share another story, which I love, and the boa
Oh
with
my
Brenda.
God. It's,
And
it's one of my favorites because it really speaks to who we all are. It's my very good friend Brenda, who passed, and within hours is sitting beside me spiritually on the couch. And in this case, Corey, I absolutely heard her voice. She was sassy and funny. And she said, I'm right here. There is nowhere but here. That's profound in itself. It's just this state we go to is like a different channel on a radio station. And we just learn to turn a channel and attune to a higher frequency. But I said to her, Brenda, everything you're telling me about what your death was like, what you're experiencing now, sounds wonderful, but we can't prove any of it. I need something evidential so our friends will know this is you. And she just made this funny motion. I could see it with her hand. She flicked her hand backwards and she said, like my boa? And I had no idea what she was talking about, but I knew she was flicking back a little boa, like a scarf that you put around your neck. I also knew that our mutual friend Lynette would know what she was talking about. This is claircognizance, when things just come into your awareness that you know. So I reached out to Lynette and I said, what is the boa story? And she said, OMG. It's a story they told to each other all the time about what happens at death. That Lynette had gone to New York City when she was a child. She was all excited that she might have a chance to see this woman who she revered, Zsa Zsa Gabor. And in fact, she was playing on Broadway. They went by the Playhouse and Lynette saw a poster of Zsa Zsa, but she was absolutely disappointed, devastated, because in this poster, Zsa Zsa did not look glamorous. She was dressed like a farm woman and no makeup, and that was her role in that play that she was in. But suddenly they went around the corner, true story, the stage door opens and out steps Zsa Zsa Gabor in all of her glory and glamour with a boa and everything. And Lynette used to talk with Brenda about what it would be like to die. And she said, I know that these bodies we're wearing are just the costumes for the role we're playing. But when we step through that curtain, through that veil of death and shed the costume, we step back into our magnificence, boa and all. And I found out from Lynette that in Brenda's final days, she passed of cancer and knew she was dying. She would say to Lynette over and over, tell me about Zsa Zsa, tell me about the boa. So here I am with this dear woman who has only died hours earlier. And I say, I love what you're teaching me, but I need evidence. She doesn't want to sit there and give me a list of, my favorite memories, blah, blah, blah. She wants to cut right to the quick. She uses 3 words, like my boa. And in that is encapsulated the message, Suzanne, it's true. We just shed these ailing bodies. Hers was cancer ridden. We take it off like a costume. And here I am in my full magnificence, boa and all. I mean, I'm filled with goosebumps. I don't know about you. I can tell that story or hear that story 100 times. It is profound and profoundly important for everybody to realize we are those boa wearing souls right now. We need to celebrate and honor our magnificence now, not just when we cross the veil.
Yes, and cross the veil. Again, perfect segue, because that term is used a lot in your work. And that is sort of the assessment of being in that other realm, that other frequency, as you mentioned. And I guess to your point, there are some people like yourself who have finely tuned this ability to maybe cross those frequencies or connect with others in those frequencies. But is that something that we all have the ability to do? Or is that just a certain few?
I have online courses, in-person courses, because I've really looked at what does it take? How could I go from being this military officer to getting astounding evidence now when I sit with people and talk to loved ones who are at a different frequency? And all it comes down to is science, Corey. These are frequencies, and the brain is a filter. it's blocking our awareness of these frequencies that are right here. It's
Mm.
doing a great job, because if we could tune into all these people, it would be like the movie Ghost with all those ghosts standing behind Whoopi Goldberg saying, "I'm going to go now, I want to talk now," and it would be
Mm-hmm.
chaos. If we could hear all of the radio stations and TV stations and cell phone signals that are right here, right now, the brain is perfectly tuned for this human in a body experience.
Mm.
Just like an animal's brain is perfectly tuned for their experience. They see the world differently than we do, but it blocks out what's right here. So with meditation and other tools that anybody can learn, we fine tune the brain, we open up the filters, we expand the filters at will. I'm not on all the time. I don't see and sense spirits all the time, but using the tools and the practices, I make that shift. And that book you mentioned, The Awakened Way, making the shift to a divinely guided life, is not just for people who want to learn to connect with loved ones. It's how to make the shift to celebrate your magnificence, to expand your consciousness at will anytime, and find peace
Mm.
and find guidance. It is life changing.
Mm. Yeah. I think it's interesting how, for me, much like your husband, I initially I was pretty skeptical of all this whole thing. I've
Yeah.
just to kind of sum it up in one space. But then my partner, who I've been with for 24 years now, early on in our relationship, was very much into this notion of the laws of attraction, well before like The Secret sort of
Yes.
became the big thing. And he introduced me to Esther and Abraham Hicks
Mhm.
and that whole world, which for me, I was like, are you okay? Because I don't think, are you sure about this? But it's fascinating because, of course, this is in that same space in many ways that what you're discussing. And I find I'm much more open to it now because of the fact that once I decided that I'm going to stop dismissing things as coincidence, maybe that is something else that voice that stopped me from doing things, or maybe guided me to make the better decision. Maybe it just wasn't my decision making. Maybe that was my aunt
Yes,
who
exactly.
was like, "Hey, I raised you better than that, kid. Don't do that." So I think the dismissive thing again, we have to. You talk about, well, the term you use, BS, which I love.
Yeah.
Can you share that?
Well, it is our BS that keeps us from opening to this greater reality that's right here, right now. And I'm not using the word that most people think. It stands for belief system.
Mm-hmm.
So I just ask people to look at your belief system. If you say this is all BS, using the other meaning of the term, you will not open to this. You will not experience flow and the kind of joy that is now a daily part of my life, the kind of peace that is accessible to all of us. So just start by saying, what if? And having a sense of wonder. And the bottom line is it helpful and is it healing? Just try it. I had a physicist reach out to me by email and said, people keep talking about clearing your chakras, your energy systems. I can't find any proof of these online. And I said, and you won't scientifically yet. We don't have instruments to sense these energy centers, but use the practice on my gifts page on my website, the 10-minute transformation, when you're feeling out of balance, out of sorts, and you see if that isn't better than any pill you could take. You just see if that changes things instantly for you and brings you into alignment and gets you on your way in a better way. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I have to just tell you what's kind of funny. I want to share with everybody. When we first logged on together here, you mentioned my orange bow tie, and I said I hardly ever wear this bow tie, but I felt compelled to wear it today. And you have on this lovely orange top as well. And I have to tell you that just now, my next question to you was going to be about the discussion between science and spirituality, bridging
Yeah.
that gap. And before I even asked it, you literally, that was the thing you just instinctively talked about. So
Yeah.
I'm not saying there's anything with that, but to me,
Oh, but there is.
all right. I mean, I'm not so eager to dismiss that as coincidence when I'm talking to you.
Right, because see, you set the intention to converse with me right away. Our energy fields, which is what we are, the body is not really solid, and science will tell you now. Just study quantum physics that nothing is solid. Energy equals matter, and the Nobel Prize in Physics was given just a few years ago that shows that subatomic particles are connected beyond time and space. Well, you and I were connected through our intention. Our energy fields were already merged before the show started. I went to get a purple shirt and I just reached for the orange instead. And now I know it was just this field effects. So I call this 21st century spirituality, when you start to say, okay, they're not so separate as they seem. We could call this a soul, or we could call it a field of energy and information, a field of consciousness. Same thing, same effects, but we can use it to bring more peace into our lives. And I know that's what so many of your listeners could really use a lot of right now. Who couldn't?
Yeah, yeah. Well, and it's funny too. I was laughing before when we started today to myself. I was like, "Gosh, this would have been a great conversation to have recorded weeks ago and have it sort of like today with election day, because we all need a little bit of calm to know there's so
Yes.
much more in the bigger picture than whatever we think is the big picture here in this earthly life. Like an election, whoever wins is not even relevant in the bigger picture of
That's
our
right.
existence, right? That's what I
That's right. And this is
feel.
what is important when you start to sit quietly every day. You realize that you control the lens of your mind, and it can be very narrowed on election day and you can suffer. Or you can widen it and take on a more cosmic consciousness and see that the long game, the bigger picture, and that determines your peace.
Mm.
So I get daily messages, just like Esther Hicks channels. I channel my guides. I have probably 6,000 of these daily messages in an Awakened Way
Hmm.
app. And the message today was all about finding peace by shifting your focus, stopping and pausing to just take a deep breath and go to that place that's already here within us. But we get so focused on the outer world and our stories, we don't realize there's a place beyond the story that's already right here.
Mm. And in that regard, you're saying that that consciousness can help us then deal with stress and chaos and help us
Yes.
be more calm in that in those environments.
Absolutely. In the book, The Awakened Way, I have a practice called vagus nerve breathing. That's not just taking deep breaths. You exhale longer than you inhale, and do both inhaling and exhaling very slowly. And those extra couple seconds during the exhale triggers the body's relaxation response. So there's the science for you. And you
Mhm.
can feel the difference if you notice how stressed you are before that vagus nerve breath, and afterwards. That'll stop a craving in its tracks, stop you from reaching for that chocolate because you realize I wanted that because I was stressed. That'll stop you from reacting angrily to someone when you really know it's not their fault. You're just stressed.
Mhm.
There are so many tools we can use that we may call spiritual, but it's really all about navigating this life with more peace.
Mhm. Right. And then that is tied to mental wellness, which is such a big necessity navigating a very chaotic world. And you do, and in the Awakening Way, you talk about that connection to excessive behaviors, like you mentioned just now with food, but also alcohol.
Yeah.
A lot of these vices that we tend to sort of like latch onto to try to fill a void. And I think it's funny, you can simplify, well, the remedy for that is maybe we're just not sitting alone with ourselves enough quietly to
That's
maybe
it.
process what we really want, because we really don't want that chocolate cake. Really. We want
But we
something
really
much
do,
bigger.
but we know it's not good for us.
Right. Like one little small slice, but not the entire cake. Right.
Exactly.
So
But there's a missing piece there. And this is where we stop and we don't go far enough. Yes, deep breathing and being peaceful is wonderful. But the subtitle of that book, The Awakened Way, making the shift
right.
to a divinely
Divinely guided
guided life.
life. Yes.
When we sit quietly, what if, Corey, we actually open ourselves to the possibility that beyond our BS, there is higher intelligence that will help us. And I just was given this insight by my guides 2 nights ago, and it's so brilliant. I'm so excited to share it. We turn outward and we say, I hope my phone doesn't react when I say this. We say, hey, Siri, because we think the answers are out there on the internet.
Right.
But what if we're just missing 2 letters? And instead of saying, hey, Siri, we take a deep breath first and say, hey, Spirit.
Mm.
Same word, add in the P and the T. Hey, Spirit, as I'm sitting quietly, this is getting a little bit much here. What is it I need to know now? And in the silence, you listen. that will change your life.
That is fascinating. And it's very true. I think with so much information coming at us all the time, that is what we don't do, as I mentioned, is having that time alone in solitude and just asking for that guidance from the bigger realm, right? The higher realm. Because I love my Google. So yeah, I could, I'll run to it for everything. Maybe just ask the spirits to answer that question for you. Might be
Oh, yeah.
more
Yeah. You
rewarding.
might not get an answer immediately all the time, but because you ask clearly from something beyond yourself, you'll notice it when it comes, and it can come in many ways. But going back to science, Albert Einstein knew that no challenge is solved at the level at which it originated. And
Mm,
all of our challenges are right here in the earthly level of consciousness. So just say, hey, spirit, call it what you want, ask your aunt across the veil, ask whoever it is, you know, what's the better step for me? What's the next thing that would really help me? And then
mhm,
just be quiet and listen. You're connected to the cosmic wide web right now as the being of consciousness that you are. I had no idea this when I was in the military, Corey, none. And so, I followed the books, followed the rules, did what everybody else did, and now I've stepped outside the box and life responds
mm.
beautifully.
Yeah, I mean, especially in that environment, because the military, I mean, it's very rigid. I mean, it is what it is. You
Yeah.
are told what to do, or you are commanding others what to do. There's no gray area. And that is what that construct is. So
Yes.
this is fascinating to me that you are in such a very different place now. Um, but it also speaks to the transformation of all of us, like the possibility of
Oh,
the higher consciousness and the ability to
limitless.
learn, right? Limitless possibilities in the consciousness.
Yeah.
Hmm. So to mediumship, and I want to actually the full title: mediumship, sacred communication with loved ones from across the veil. To getting back to that again, because death and loss are such a common denominator with all of us. And I know for my family over the past couple of years, we went through a very difficult time of within 11 months, there were three uh, deaths of my immediate family. So, and it was
Wow.
just like, my mother had been a caregiver for two of them. And so they were her siblings and my grandfather. And so now, she's sort of in this place of, now what do I do? I've been a caregiver for 24 years. What's my purpose? And so last night, she and I had a wonderful talk about you. I told her, I was like, I cannot wait to talk to Suzanne tomorrow. Just because
Yeah.
this conversation gives me hope to
Yes,
know
it
that
should.
it's not finished.
Oh, and they're just so close, Corey. Every reading I do, I ask them, tell me something going on in your loved one's life right now so they know you're around. And they'll give the most mundane things. Like, I saw you eating popcorn last night. And it's just like, what? Yeah, because it's like like my friend Brenda was sitting beside me on the couch. She said our worlds are interpenetrating each other. They're just hang around, and on special occasions they're more close than ever because we're thinking about them so much. All you have to do is think about your loved ones, talk to them, and hopefully the book Mediumship will open people up to the many ways they communicate with us even before you learn to communicate directly.
Hmm. Well, I guess, you know, this is more even amplified this time of year, holiday season,
Oh, yes. Yeah.
and there's a heightened sense of loss and loneliness. So, what advice would you give for those who are grieving during this time in particular?
Feel that grief and honor it, first of all, because this path of mediumship has shown me why we feel so empty, why we turn to alcohol and food and drugs and everything else. We do it because we don't want to feel bad. And so we sedate those feelings. Allow yourself to feel everything, because we as souls, we exist in this realm of bliss. So we come into human body for the fullness of life. And that includes the downs as well as the ups. So feel the grief and then transmute it by going to your heart and acknowledging that's love. I
Hmm.
feel that because I love them so much. And then go out, and I call these the 3 E's of awakened living. Educate yourself about the afterlife. I have so many afterlife videos on my YouTube channel to tell you what it's like, what they're doing now. Watch videos of people who've had near-death experiences. They're positive, beautiful experiences for the most part, 99%. So understand that death is not the end, And then experience for yourself. That's the second E, that you are a soul, so you know that they are souls. And you can experience that with my 3-minute sip of the divine, another tool from the book and YouTube. Sit in peace, 3 minutes, and you can open up an actual personal experience with your own loved ones and your guides. And the third E is engage those spirits, engage higher consciousness, talk to your loved ones who have passed, and be open to the possibility, which is reality, that they hear you and will communicate back.
Suzanne Giesemann, former Navy commander turned best-selling author and medium. Thanks so much for being here today with me on Motivational Mondays.